So teaching your kids some of these things can be also helpful when presenting healthy foods. My laundry's done. It sings me a little song. With the Chirp YouTube channel. Today I'm here with another video in our little series on autism and how we can work on some of the things that are part of the diagnostic criteria of an autism spectrum disorder. And today we're going to talk about picky eating. Picky eating can come from lots of different reasons. It is multifactorial, and so we can't really approach it from just one angle. We need to have a team approach. Once again, like almost everything else with an autism spectrum disorder, it's gonna work better if we have a team. So my first point is get a feeding specialist on board with your team, with your child, with your family. You need a feeding therapist. Sometimes feeding therapists are occupational therapists. Sometimes feeding therapists are speech language pathologists. Sometimes the two different disciplines work with a team approach, and maybe there's an SLP and an OT on the team together and they work with the kid at the same time, each one coming from a slightly different perspective. I highly recommend that because you don't know what you don't know as a parent. You can't all of a sudden in 5 minutes on the internet get a degree in occupational therapy and a focused specialty in sensory disorders or swallowing issues or other feeding problems. You can't on the internet get yourself the experience that you need to be able to help your child. So you need to get the professionals working with you who do have that experience. And a feeding therapist is the first one I recommend. If you notice other sensory issues, I have videos on that I will link to right there. If there are other sensory issues, then of course you want to get those addressed also, but you want to make sure to have the feeding specialist as part of the team, not just a regular occupational therapist who does sensory stuff, but a separate person who works on feeding. And I should tell you that if you are an adult and you have issues with significant picky eating, then please find yourself a feeding therapist. You don't want to go your whole life. I guess maybe we should talk about this now. Picky eating isn't just a problem because it's irritating. It's a problem because it inhibits people's social interactions. We spend a lot of our times with other people eating, relating around food, and if you only eat French fries, it's gonna seem weird to the people you hang out with, and it may cause some social issues. Even more important than that, though, is of course that most of the foods that people with feeding disorders tend to prefer are not nutrient dense, and in fact many of them have almost no nutrition at all. I have nothing against potatoes. Potatoes in themselves are a very healthy food, but when you take away their skin, which is where a lot of the nutrition is, and when you deep fat fry them in oil, or worse, lard, a lot of bad things happen to those potatoes that make them dangerous to eat in large quantities. Most of the foods that people with different sorts of food issues are those kind of foods. They're very simple to eat. They're not offensive. They're not too crunchy or too mushy. They're not too colorful. They're not too flavorful because their sensory system in the mouth isn't prepared for or used to those kinds of foods. It's not good to just go your whole life without eating those kinds of foods. Instead, we want to help the body get used to those foods, tolerate those foods a little bit at a time, and therefore be able to eat them. It's kind of like allergy shots a little bit. At first, you can't handle peanuts at all, but they're coming up with these new strategies where they give you the itsy bitsy teeny tiniest little bit of peanut so that your body gets used to it without killing you. Don't try this at home. There's a very special protocol. Please don't go home and feed yourself peanuts if you have a peanut allergy. But you do know that these new procedures are always coming out, and it always starts out with a tiny little bit, and the body gets used to things when we do them over and over. This is my very first point. Get a specialist involved, because kids with autism who have any sort of picky eating are probably going to have some nutritional deficiencies. Some nutritional deficiencies cannot be fixed with a supplement. Yes, that might help, but it doesn't actually get absorbed the same way as it does from the food. We're meant to eat mostly plants. We're meant to get our nutrition from actual food. So if you didn't realize that picky eating was a problem, which you probably did, now hopefully you realize that it's not just that it's annoying because it's hard to feed children who have issues with food. It also is dangerous because they're not getting the nutrition that they need. And right here I should insert that there have been studies about strange things like broccoli and the effect that broccoli has on autism, on the symptoms of autism. And it's huge. It made a difference in communication skills and behavior, in sensory difficulties. Eating healthy foods, there's something in especially plants, and especially certain plants like broccoli, which has this miracle chemical in it called sulforaphane, I believe. And it works miracles in the brain. Not only does it fight cancer and inflammation, but it makes your brain work better. And especially if you have a neurological disorder, if your brain is wired in a way that makes it harder for you to do certain things, you want to maximize your brain's potential. And that is definitely going to include eating plants, eating healthier foods. Point number 2 is to present healthy foods not just as foods. A lot of times kids will respond poorly because the mouth isn't ready for the food. But if you'll notice this, when you see an unfamiliar food, are you most likely to just pop it in your mouth? Or are you most likely to touch it first, smell it first, to see if it might be safe or if indeed it is completely threatening? This is what we need to help kids do. So for example, let's say celery. Celery is kind of a weird texture, kind of stringy, very crunchy. It smells a little like grass or weeds of some kind. So some kids might find it a little threatening. But if we do art with celery, if we make celery into logs and drive it around on a little Hot Wheels truck that we have that would normally have logs on it, a logging truck, I guess. We drive the celery around. We make the celery into people and we have them talk to each other. We make the celery into some other toy. We paint with it. We sniff it. We talk about how it smells. We talk about how it looks. We cut it apart. You hold the knife. We discover that it has these fascinating strings inside. If you can also talk about the nutrients that are in celery, then that's even better. There's a really cool guy called Maccabee, and he is a Jamaican man who does really cool rhyming raps about different vegetables, mostly vegetables. I think he does some fruits too. I'll put a link to him down below. His most famous one is called Cucumber, and it's adorable. It talks about how great cucumbers are and all their different traits that make them wonderful for humans. There are also books. There's one called Fruits in Suits, and there's one about vegetables where I think they're wearing underwear. I can't exactly remember, but I'll link those books down below because they're hilarious. And also they help to present different facets of healthy foods to your kids who otherwise might find these foods to be the bad foods and French fries and chicken nuggets to be the good foods. We want to switch that around in their brain as much as possible. My third tip is change the texture of the foods that your child doesn't like. I have a niece who really doesn't like beans, but if you smash the beans up and then put vegetables and taco sauce on top, she likes them. If you smash the beans up and you put them in a burrito, refried beans for example, then she doesn't have a problem with beans. And she's a pretty picky eater. You can do this by smashing vegetables, pureeing vegetables. For example, pureed carrots are delicious and super sweet. Same with pumpkin and squash and sweet potatoes, especially if you add a tiny little bit of maple syrup or brown sugar. Another option is smoothies. I'm a huge fan of smoothies. I like to get a lot of my nutrition in a smoothie. Because I have Crohn's disease, sometimes raw vegetables are really hard for me to digest. I get around this problem by blending them in my blender in a big, huge smoothie. I will put the recipe down below because it is full of lots of healthy things. And I even put beans in there. I'm not a big fan of protein powders and artificial foods like that, so I make sure that my smoothie is full of protein by putting beans in there. And folates too. Folates are very important. Anyway, it's delicious. I love a great big smoothie in the morning, and your kids will love it too. And if it tastes like a milkshake, they're not going to balk when they find out that there are beans in it, or that there is lettuce in it, or that there is broccoli powder in it. I think that's a great idea. If you can't get your kids to eat broccoli, put it in a smoothie. You don't even have to get the powder. You can just put the broccoli in. Cooked is better, of course. Make sure to play around with your smoothie recipes and all your other recipes to make sure that it tastes good. Because part of the reason we don't eat healthy food is because we don't know how to make it taste good. Think about spaghetti. Let's say that you're making spaghetti. You don't need to just make white pasta and then tomato sauce and put the pasta sauce on top of the pasta and eat that. This is a very good place to get some extra nutrition. Add vegetables to the sauce. If your kids don't like the chunks of vegetables inside the sauce, put the sauce in the blender with carrots, zucchini, broccoli, spinach, blend it all up, and then pour it on the pasta after that. You don't have to just plop everything in. It takes slightly more time to run it through the blender, but not very much. You can do the same thing with any casseroles that you make as you're making the sauce. Blend it up with a lot of different cooked vegetables. Another good hint is to take the skins off of certain vegetables when you are making them for kids. The skin sometimes can be bitter, and sometimes, a lot of the times, our kids, especially those with sensory systems that are on the alert, they oftentimes are more sensitive to bitter tastes, and they're offensive to them. So, for example, when you cook zucchini, of course it's a good idea to leave the skin on if you can, but if you can't, take the skin off, cook it up in a little pan or in the oven, and then put it in your sauce, blend it up, put it in your smoothie, blend it up. The same thing with eggplant. Keep that in mind. An eggplant is a great vegetable to get in the habit of stashing in some secret recipes. Think about that as you're cooking. Is this a recipe where I can hide more vegetables? Because we want to get more vegetables in those kids' brains. My next tip is what I call choice-based meals. This is a meal where everybody can sort of assemble their own plate. You might think of something like pasta. We were just talking about spaghetti. Pasta is a great option here. You can think of different ways to make pasta a choose-your-own-adventure meal. You might make alphabet whole wheat pasta and rotini whole wheat pasta, or maybe you even get some pasta that's made out of garbanzo beans instead, but they're fun shapes. So your kids can choose which kind of noodles they want. You can get long skinny noodles and the curly ones and the alphabet ones, and everybody can pick which kind they want. You can have different sauces. You can have one that is a normal red sauce. You can have one that is a cashew-based cream sauce. You can make a ground-up vegetable puree sauce that the kids can put on top. Maybe a carrot sauce, or pureed carrots, or pureed sweet potatoes that the kids can use as a sauce. It can be really fun for kids to have the option to make choices, especially about issues that make them a little bit nervous. When I'm feeling a little tense, it helps me to feel as if I have a choice. I don't feel trapped. I feel like I have some agency in this. I can make a difference in the outcome of this adventure. And the way I'm going to make a difference is by choosing which pasta I want and which sauce I want. Another type of meal that you can make in this manner is burgers. You can have sweet potato fries or regular potato fries on the side. You can have a walnut and mushroom burger, or a black bean and rice burger. You can put ketchup or mustard or pickle relish or actual pickles or tomato or lettuce or none of the above on top. You can use a bun or no bun. It can be a really fun adventure to be able to make choices about food. Also think of a taco/burrito night, hard tacos, flat tacos, taco bowl, put it in a burrito. So many choices. Lots of healthy vegetables go along with tacos and burritos. I recommend steering away from the refried beans that have lard in them. They're gross, the texture's icky, and they're not healthy either. So either mash your own beans or just use whole beans, or find refried beans that don't have all that yuck in there. There are a few brands that are pretty good. Also, of course, in a burrito or taco, there are lots of vegetables, tomatoes, olives. I like olives in mine. I don't know that they are a traditional taco topping, but I like them. Tomatoes, lettuce, jalapenos if your kids are risk takers. Lots of different sauces, taco sauce, enchilada sauce. In our family, I grew up in Minnesota, and people are very sensitive to spices. At least my genetic history has traditionally been very sensitive to spices. On top of Mexican type foods, they would often put a Italian dressing sort of thing just to give it some flavor, I guess. I don't know. I think the vegetables in themselves have pretty good flavor. You can do this with pizza. Obviously you have the crusts, and then you let the kids put on the different vegetables that they want on top. You can have kids help you make the smoothies. You have all the ingredients and the kids get to tell you what to put in. And you can also do this with a pancakes, waffles type of meal. Do you want blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, a couple of chocolate chips? Do you want to put jam on top? Do you want to put some maple syrup on top? There are lots of options with breakfast also. And of course, do you want your potatoes on the side to be cubed, or do you want them to be shredded, like shredded hash browns? I'm trying to demonstrate that, but that was kind of weird. There are a lot of options in most of the meals, and a lot of times we just assume that the kid has to eat this, what I made, or nothing, or I just give them chicken nuggets and french fries out of the freezer again because I know that they'll eat that. Let's keep trying with kids. They do have a capacity to change. I know that seems strange, but it's true. We all have the capacity to change. Even if we're 85 years old, even if we're 105 years old, we don't have to be stuck. And our kids, especially, we don't want them to be stuck when they're just so little and they still have so much opportunity ahead of them. Keep in mind that kids need to experience a food, to be presented with a food, to interact with a food lots and lots of times before they're willing to accept it as part of their normal meal routine. So keep trying. Don't give up on any of these foods. Sneak them in where you can. My next tip is to have kids help you plan for the meals and then help you actually create the meals. I recommend for our kids with autism, it's a great idea to have visuals of what we need on a list. So there's a picture of tomatoes, tortillas, hard taco shells, taco sauce, beans in a can, and a bunch of other stuff that you don't need. And your kid helps you go down and you say, we need burritos. And your kid can check the box by burritos. You can take pictures of the foods yourselves. You can practice writing down a list by hand of what you need to pick up at the store. You can practice looking at recipes and putting what's on the recipe on your list. There are a lot of learning opportunities that happen around food and around cooking, because unless we go out to eat every single meal, which I hope most people aren't, the numbers might tell me otherwise, we have to know how to cook. We have to know how to feed ourselves. If you can, have your kid go shopping with you. Teach your child where to find the different items on the list. Help your child to help you. Even though it takes longer to have a child help you make a meal, it's much more beneficial for the child. Gives you some time together. Of course, make sure you're doing the dangerous things with the knives and with the oven and boiling water. But your child can put things in a pot. Your child can wash the potatoes. That is not too much for almost every child. So even though it's easier to leave the kids out of it and tell them just to go watch TV, incorporate them as much as possible. Not only is it good just developmentally for kids to be involved in the shopping, the cooking, the preparing, all of that, but it's good socially for kids to be engaged in something, and it's good for your relationship, and it's good for your kids' relationship with food. We're much more likely to eat something if we had a hand in making it. I don't know why that is, but it's true. One last tip is to use divided plates. I'm thinking specifically of a plate that has little walls in it, so that there are 2 or maybe 3 different areas within the plate. We have some of these that look like little construction sites, which are pretty cute. But then you can say, when we're eating, the biggest spot is for fruits and vegetables. And then we have the other half of the plate. If you're just doing half and half, one half is for fruits and vegetables. The other half is for some kind of grain or casserole, or like that's where your rice and beans would go. And of course, most of the meals that we eat are not just rice and beans, fruit and vegetables. Most of them are mixed up, like tacos or pizza or pancakes. But for those days where you do a meal that's kind of split up into parts, different types of food, not only is it helpful for kids to have their food kind of separate, but also they're more likely to eat the fruit and vegetables and to put it on their plate, because that's what this side of the plate is for. And kids sometimes like to follow rules when they're feeling a little anxious. It's also a good habit to get into for us, that we remember that it's important enough to eat fruits and vegetables that we need to fill one half of our plate with that, because our own brains need to keep developing too. We need to make sure that we're feeding our brains as well as the rest of our body, not just our taste buds. And remember, taste buds change. It can take a week or 2, but once you start eating healthier foods, your gut bacteria actually change, and they start wanting and craving the foods that they are designed to eat. So if you eat a lot of junk food, a lot of fried food, a lot of ice cream, whatever, you will have the gut bacteria that like ice cream and fried foods. If you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you're going to have the gut bacteria that crave fruits and vegetables and whole grains. You build your own gut. So build it well. As you build your gut, you also build your brain. And it works the same way for your kids. P.S. Don't let your kids graze. I know a lot of families just kind of dole out snacks throughout the day. Wait for your kid to get hungry and then have meals. usually 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. Most people, especially kids, need to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours. So do that. Try to make meals and snacks as regular as you can, because you know our kids like to know what's happening. Don't forget, please get professionals involved if your kid has difficulties in the area of super picky eating. Even mild picky eating can be a problem, so find yourself a feeding therapist, and I will put some links in the box down below. I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope that you have a wonderful week. See you in my next video. Bye. So on top of Mexican food, they would often put, bless you,